Having explored the role of the media and the globalization of Afrobeats, we are going to then move on to explore Afrobeat songs and religious practices. Just like we started with the Afrobeat without the S, which was pioneered by Fela Nicola Pokuti, we are going to draw on Fela's lived experiences in southwestern Nigeria, his engagement within the Kalakuta Republic, and the shrine that he created within that republic. We are going to also be exploring the ideologies that informed what that shrine is about and all forms of practices that are enacted within the shrine and the linkages that we'll find between the shrine, the religious practices in Africa, and all forms of icons that Fela and Nicola Kokuti linked to that religious practices. And then we will tidy this up to examine the role of religion and politics, especially political activism, in calling attention to the ills of the society. So, Olorunyomi's work that we are studying, which is entitled "On Whose Side Are the Orisha Gods?" The Orisha or the gods. The Orisha is a word for the gods, the deities that are worshipped in traditional African religious practices, mostly in southwestern Nigeria. I am not saying that traditional religion is only what is done within this space or in the region of southwestern Nigeria, but I am saying that the word Orisha is a Yoruba word that is used to describe the gods. In the Yoruba traditional religion, and Yoruba is in southwestern Nigeria, just to make sure there is clear understanding of what this implies. Fela in his work, not just only as the Afrobeat singer, but within his shrine constitutes some sort of deviant worship. So worship in this sense, it's not just what is done within the African religion, but is a bridge or is an hybrid of African traditional religion and his own philosophy of what religion should look like. This philosophy, it's not just what is read because of his work, but the critics of um Fela's choice of lifestyle and how he creates a community based on family system that is based on polygamy, and at the same time how he uses that as a tool of religion, of politics, yet of music, and a career that he was passionate about. And so, for example, there are practices within his shrine that counters the normative religious practices that you will find across different spaces, not just only the traditional religion, but also in other forms of religion like the Christian religion. So for Fela, he thinks that when you engage with what he calls worship, it is an hermeneutical practice, even within his countercultural behavior. For example, he uses nudity as a way to support the fact that women in traditional religion and within the shrine in African religion, dance with their breasts open and with some sort of nudity. And he also claims that this also plays out in churches when worshippers, dress half naked and even dance half naked in those worship. And so for him, all the critics are saying, and all forms of criticism about nudity of women that he uses in his shrine are directly tied to his understanding of African religious practices. And so for him, the deities that were represented are not just deities that relates him, the people, the region of his practice back to African religion, but he also integrates symbols that represent the gods of the contemporary, like for example, he has Kwame Nkrumah's, image in his shrine. He has symbols that represent icons like Malcolm X in ways to bring about the black movements, the black rhetorics, and the politics of how the black people are fighting oppression and engaging with power, especially in ways that they have questions, that they have questioned, powers and all forms of oppressions that are in between. And specifically, in fact, his use of white costume that he puts on his face. You're going to see some videos linked to this lesson, are reference to the gods within the African traditional religion. And these gods are tied to the Egungun's festival and the Efe that comes with the Geledes. And so the Efe is like the comedy that are used as some sort of satire to speak back to the ills of the society. So Fela draws on all of these forms of aesthetics and practices that are tied to the past history, its belief system, the ancestors and their role in, in the world beyond and in the present. So because in African traditional religion, the ancestors are believed to be part of the current world. And so that is the way Fela's shrine and the practices within that shrine imbricates the ritual practices that are found there. And this leads to the question of not just time and specialty in rituals, but the performativity that comes with rituals. When there is a lot of performance in rituals, for example, how Fela would kill the chicken and drink the blood and share some of these rituals with the audience and with some other people who are performing with him. So is this ritual, is this performance? But when we go back to African traditional religion, there are no prescriptions of doctrines, because there are metaphors and proverbs within the cultures of the Yoruba that also attest to the fact that there are ways of going about situations that don't necessarily go the way we have imagined or anticipated it to go. For example, the Yorubas will say, Ta abara don afi ube shebo. Adon is like a bat and an animal, and ube is another kind of animal that could be used for sacrifice or for whatever you want to do in place of a bat. And meaning that there are no like hardcore rules in traditional religious practices. And therefore, there is that intersection of performance in ritual and ritual in performance. And so, that intersection embodies the forms of performances that are expressed at the Fela Anikulapo's shrine. So, and within this performativity of Fela's work, there is that connection with, causative agency, and why some rituals may not be accepted or there might be need for modifications. So, for example, when he tried to kill the chicken and then there was no blood that dripped from the chicken, that led to other forms of rituals which he performed at the crossroad, which also is directly tied to the signal that he does with the cross and during his performances while he was alive, because it ties back to the deity of Ishu and the kinds of rituals that are put at the crossroad. And so, because of what he did at the crossroad, he believed that the gods were appeased, and and that was also a prophecy about his death and that of the Abacha regime in Nigeria, the collapse of the Abacha regime. What he's trying to say is that there is that cosmology around Ifa deity and around African traditional rituals, I should say, not Ifa deity, the rituals and how that points to things to come and revelations of things to expect, and how such revelations could mediate the situation or could even cause a reason or could be the reason to modify some practices. In all of this, beyond all of this, in his performances, we see what he called the Yabi series. I already talked to you about this earlier in this class about the forms of performances that Fela did, and the Yabi series specifically are the form of performances that he uses to speak back to power, to challenge the issues going on. But within that Yabi series, the shrine within the Kalakuta Republic shows the democratization of the processes by which Fela engaged with his narratives. He did not just create the narratives are co created because he invites his audience to join in the performance. And whatever the audience say and the assessment, the joint assessment of anyone who chooses to speak up or respond back to Fela's narrative or give even alternative perspective about his narratives are ways that he continues to shape and reshape his narratives and use that as a way to consolidate not just his own thoughts but his collaborative negotiation with his audience as a way to join force together in that performance to speak back to power and to achieve the target goal of his political activism. I have left ideas, questions, videos are linked to the Canvas site. I need you to go in there based on your understanding of the reading. There are questions to discuss, ideas to nuance further, and to share your thoughts. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Happy learning.